Hello, I'm John Harrison, and welcome to Soul Matters. I believe that the soul is the seat of the emotions, that the soul is found at the crossroads where intellect, sentiment, and intuition meet together. I believe that soul matters, and I'm pleased to have as our guest Bishop Staccato Powell. A native of North Carolina, Staccato is a prolific preacher, accomplished teacher, and skilled advocate. Staccato's career points towards an abiding commitment and dedication to human service. He is widely regarded as an ecumenicist that reaches across religious zip codes, social barriers, and boundaries, all for the sake of influencing people, changing circumstances, and altering conditions for the good. Staccato, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and a delight to be here with you, John.
You know, I'm hoping that perhaps we can start by hearing a little bit about the man. Where did you grow up, and a little something about your family?
Well, I grew up in the southeastern corner of the state of North Carolina, a little rural town known as Hallsboro. In the agrarian culture, cropping tobacco, I was the knee baby, as they called it in the South, of a family of 6. My parents had 4 children, thought they were done, and then 7 years later, I was conceived, and my mother said she cried for 9 months because she didn't want another child. And for that, I can kind of understand now that I'm a parent myself. But it was there that I was nurtured in the faith. I grew up in the AME Zion Church there at Mount Hebron, Hallsboro. And from there, kind of launched out and went to college and did things, but started pastoring at 17 years old as a senior in high school.
Wow.
And went on to college at University of North Carolina at Charlotte and studied political science, then left there and after 2.5 years. Graduated in that time span because I just went to school year-round.
Wow.
It was a good way of avoiding having to go back to the tobacco fields. And then went on to Duke University School of Divinity, received a Master's of Divinity, and subsequently went to North Carolina Central University School of Law, where I received a Doctorate of Jurisprudence.
Wow, remarkable. And did you actually practice the law?
Not really. I did some things at a law firm in Wilson, North Carolina, quite a prominent firm. One of the partners, G.K. Butterfield, is now in Congress from the 1st Congressional District. Another partner, Toby Fitch, is Superior Court Judge in North Carolina. Third partner, James Wind, sits on the Appellate Court out of Virginia. So they've really done well, members of that firm. And some would say I did okay. I'm a bishop in the AME Zion Church, so who knows?
Now, did you always want to be a bishop? Did you envision that for yourself? Or?
Well, my first encounter with the bishop was when Bishop Herbert Bell Shaw came to Mount Hebron to break ground for a fellowship hall. And that was my first encounter with the episcopacy. And I was thoroughly impressed that a man of his station and stature would show up in the little enigmatic village of Hallsboro, and it sort of wrote on me. I didn't really think about it deeply, but apparently I started imagining. And I just heard last week from a very noted speaker, Steve Harvey, that your imagination is the preview of your coming attraction. So obviously my imagination at that time was the preview for my being a bishop today.
Amazing. You mentioned that you have children.
I do. Yeah, I have a 33-year-old son, Staccato K. Powell, who is a student at the United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, working on his doctorate of ministry.
All right.
And a daughter who turned 27 yesterday, who is a graduate of Spelman and University of Pennsylvania, and she's a social worker.
And have they joined you in your work of ministry?
They have. They both have. At this point, Staccato is pastoring the Fisher Church in Phoenix, Arizona. He's been there since January of this year. and Nicole serves as my missionary supervisor for the Western Episcopal District.
Yep.
And they both have a focus on mental health. Nicole's initiative for the missionaries is the church's response to mental health, and Staccato is writing his Doctorate of Ministries project, also dealing with mental health and how the church responds to mental health.
Wow, that's amazing. So in this sense, I'm hearing that that you have the church taking an active role in the lives of people and helping them and so on.
Well, the church is really the catalytic force for transformation in the lives of people. As this show indicates, soul matters. We are quintessentially spirit. We were created in the image of the divine, who is purely spirit. And therefore, we find very little sustained fulfillment and satisfaction in anything other than those things pertaining to the soul and the spirit. It is no accident that no matter what we endeavor to do, the enthusiasm, the excitement that emanates from it is very short-lived, because the only thing that can be sustained are those things that pertain to the soul.
My. As I hear you talk, I'm curious now. I kind of want to hear a little bit, if you will, about your conversion experience.
Well, interestingly, my conversion came quite gradually. It wasn't a sudden conversion. I was exposed to the faith by my parents. Both were members of the church. My mother in Sampson County of North Carolina, in a little town, Garland, the St. Stephen's Church. My father in Hallsboro and his family. And they insisted that we go to Sunday school and to worship. Worship was only twice a month because we shared a pastor with the church in the nearby town. So it was a circuit church.
Yeah.
We met on 2nd and 4th, but we had Sunday school every Sunday. And if you didn't go to Sunday school in church, all other activities for the day were canceled. If you were too sick to go to church, then you had to stay sick until it was time to go to school the next day, because you couldn't do anything else. And it was in the prayer meeting one Wednesday, literally not something that you can make up, but I was literally in prayer meeting where I went routinely with my mother when the conversion experience ultimately happened. Now, I felt called to ministry at 12 years old, and I was very aware of the call on my life, but because of the small rural town in which I grew up, I knew that you were held to a different standard, and the accountability, once you confessed your faith and your religious experience, you were held to a strict account to give. And so I wasn't ready to do that at 12 years old. But at 16, I was involved in a near-fatal automobile accident. And I knew from that accident and the recuperation process that, again, I needed to revisit that call.
Wow.
And the call came at that point as a do or die situation.
Wow.
Either I would preach and live or not preach and die. And so thank God I'm here, yet alive, as a result of having embraced the ministry and called to ministry that was on my life, and literally started pastoring as a senior in high school, and pastored through my senior year, through my years of college, divinity school, and law school.
What then, I mean, that's powerful. What then would you say is your personal mission?
Well, my personal mission at this point is to reclaim God's original intent for his church.
Wow.
I think the potence of the church has been severely diminished because we have not been intentional about those tenets that were initially set forth in the first century church. The church was never intended to be a static institution or organization, but a dynamic organism impacting the lives of people where they are. I believe that if we are transparent with our issues, then the church can be transformative in its impact and transitional in its intent. The church is the only body, the only organism that can literally bring about transformation to the lives of people. God still heals and delivers. He still sets free. No matter what the condition is, I'm confident that he's still able to do that which is exceeding and abundant. One scripture says, eyes have not seen and ears have not heard, and neither has it entered into the hearts of man what God will do for those who love him. And so we have to be unapologetic. And it is my mission to restore the kind of dynamism that we saw in the first century church, where people were literally healed after having been ill for a number of years and even raised from the dead. And I'm confident that we're living in an era where we're about to see that kind of dynamism restored and ushered in, not just where we are, but globally.
What role does prayer play?
I think prayer is, in fact, the real key. Scripture teaches us that anything we ask according to his will, it shall be done. And therefore, I convene 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I actually have 3 prayer calls.
Wow.
One at 3:30 Pacific Standard Time, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. The other at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard. Third at 7 Pacific Standard Time.
Wow.
And so that's why I'm up at 3 each morning doing my own personal devotions. And anyone can join in. There is a number that we use to access the call. You can simply dial 712-432-3066, and the access code is 621-775.
And which time slot would that number be?
For the Pacific Standard Time, that would be 7 a.m.
Okay.
And they can dial in at 7 a.m. and we're there on the line. There's no need to announce who you are. You can be there in anonymity. If you have specific prayer requests, you can submit those requests via email by sending them directly to prayers, P-R-A-Y-E-R-S, at westernamezion.us.
Wonderful. All right. So I happen to know, you did share this with me, and I'd like for you to share with others, this explosion. Can you tell me about that?
Well, the explosion is a festival of healing. It will take place September 27th, 28th, and 29th in Vancouver, Washington, an outdoor setting, Esther Short Park, downtown Vancouver. We're expecting 8,000 people to come. It's a festival that will speak to the healing of creation, the healing of relationships, the healing of mind, body, and spirit. We believe that the word is true, that if there are any sick among you, that you can call for the elders of the church. We believe in the anointing with oil and laying on of hands. And what do you have to lose? If anything is ailing you, why not give this an opportunity? We invite people to come. We expect people from every ethnic background, socioeconomic class, no matter what the hue is, they can come and experience the supernatural power that is still very much on display. And we're confident if they take the time to show up, they will not go away the same way that they came, but their faith will be fortified. And that's why we call it Dare to Believe. And they'll be able to go online and look at the Dare to Believe website at www.d2b@faith.com.
All right. And the dates again?
The dates are September 27th, 28th, and 29th. During the day, we will have workshops at the Heathman Lodge in Vancouver, and each evening at 6 o'clock, there will be an outdoor festival, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, at the Esther Short Park in Vancouver, Washington.
That Esther Short Park has quite a history itself, doesn't it?
It really does. I was amazed to find out the history. As a matter of fact, a United Methodist bishop who used to serve in that community as a pastor, who's now retired, shared with me that it's Esther Short Park where many of the camp meetings for the Pentecostal church was held, and they witnessed a miraculous healing. I believe, really, John, that the West will again serve as the launching pad and platform for a revival that will sweep this nation. and even globally, because we are living now in a global community.
Yes, we are.
Much like the revival that took place on Azusa Street, I'm confident that a similar move will be born, and perhaps it's the Esther Short Park event at the explosion where we begin to see those seeds planted. Because this explosion is just the first of several. We will have one in 2019 in Denver, Colorado. Same outdoor venue, outdoor forum, that we're confident that God is going to show up in a mighty and a miraculous way. And people will be able to share their stories. It will be not just an event, but a movement that people will talk about for years to come. And I'm confident that in this region where George Barna's study and other pundits are saying is the most de-churched and unchurched region of this country, the harvest fields are white. And we have been praying fervently to the God of the harvest, the Lord of the harvest, that he will send willing workers. And if he doesn't send anybody else, you and I are here.
Here we are.
So we're ready to go and engage and embrace this movement and the excitement that it will generate.
As you share this vision, I'm reminded of a little booklet that I read, Christians Under Construction.
That was another life, it seems. A book that I was privileged to co-author with a colleague of mine. We were both pastoring at that time in the Cape Fear Conference, and then he went on to pastor in Baltimore, Maryland. I went on to pastor in St. Louis, Missouri, when the book was initially published. And we are now colleagues on the Board of Bishops. He served in this particular Western Episcopal District 2 quadrennials ago, and I'm now serving here in the personage I speak of the Right Reverend Dennis Vernon Proctor, who's bishop of the northeastern area where you hail from.
That's right.
He's the bishop of your home area. And that book was written in the early stages of our faith formation, when we were beginning to become acutely aware of our own journey and the challenges that you're confronted with, and that we were not yet a finished product, and we're not now, but we were more acutely under construction at that time, and therefore the title, Christians Under Construction.
I'm curious, what would you say to someone starting out, responding to a call from God to serve the people of God? What advice would you give?
I would give the advice that was given to me by my mentor in ministry, who was also an episcopate in the life of the church, the late Reuben Lee Speaks.
Oh, yes.
The old man used to say to us, he was a mentor of Bishop Proctor, Bishop Larte, Bishop Monroe, Bishop Frencher, half of the board he mentored. And he would say, when I'm sleeping on some distant star, you're going to bless my spirit. But this is the advice he gave us. He said, if you're going to be successful in ministry, you have to do 3 things. You have to pray hard, work hard, and live right.
My mind.
Though they are simple in their statement, most people find it very challenging and difficult to do. To sustain a prayer life that's perpetual, to practice it on a daily basis, in season and out of season and without ceasing, and to really renounce the flesh and to live right, and to have the kind of work ethic that causes you to get up when no one is demanding it, and spend the time necessary to do ministry in a way that's going to be impactful upon the society in which we live. We have the only power that can really transform a people in a sustained way. And not just for this life, but for the life to come. And even if you don't believe in the life to come, I would rather hedge my bets on the side of caution to get beyond and discover that it's really real and I did not make adequate preparation.
What would you consider to be the greatest distraction to people responding to the call of God?
Well, we live in a time where you have social media, multimedia. There's a great clamor for the attention and the imagination of people, particularly in a region that's so heavily saturated with many alternatives and options. There are things to do. Television is on 24/7. There are more outlets and networks than we've ever seen before. When I grew up in rural North Carolina, we were lucky if we could get ABC and NBC, and we had to always adjust the rabbit ears to get clear reception. And at 11:30, that national anthem was played, and the television signed off. Well, now that's not the case.
That's
and even
right.
if you don't have television, you can live stream with Hulu and Netflix and all other kinds of things, Amazon, on your computer. You can even do it from your smartphone. So you're constantly bombarded and you're overly saturated with things. So it's difficult to block some of this out to hear the still small voice of a God who's trying to direct your soul into a way that will ultimately matter.
You have been blessed with opportunity and preparation. You kind of mentioned that at the beginning of the show. I'm wondering, can you share a little bit about your understanding of what your spiritual gifts are?
Yeah, if you'd asked me that 4 or 5 years ago, I would not be able to respond as readily as I am now. But through maturation and spiritual understanding, my perhaps greatest spiritual gift is the gift of discernment.
My.
Doesn't take me long to know people who are authentic and genuine, to be able to detect the direction of a situation. Perhaps my second most prominent gift is the gift of prophecy. It took me a while to understand that I could see things and speak to people, and when it started happening, it dawned on me that the indication the authenticity of a prophet is when what you say comes to pass. And that has happened more times than I can begin to count. And the third gift is one that I'm most surprised by, and that's the gift of the laying on of hands and watch people recover.
Yes.
Jesus says in the Gospel of Mark, 16th chapter, that these signs shall follow them that believe. And one of the signs is that they will be able to lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. I'm most amazed by that. I have more stories than I can begin to talk about, people who were diagnosed with cancer. One of the ones that's most impactful is when my daughter was graduating from Spelman in 2012, I encountered an alum of the institution who was very distraught because she had been recently diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she was extremely distraught because her father had died from the same diagnosis. And God spoke to her through me and said, "You shall live and not die."
Wow.
I returned to North Carolina, where I was serving as pastor in Raleigh, and she returned to Maryland, but subsequently came to North Carolina to worship at Grace. I anointed her, laid hands on her, and that was in 2012. This is 2017, and she yet lives.
My. So I understand gifts as being that which is bestowed upon one from God.
Absolutely.
And therefore, a gift is different than a strength.
Absolutely.
Strength is something that we kind of by sheer force of will and tenacity develop. What would you say are your strengths for ministry?
Well, my strength for ministry, I think, is an indefatigable work ethic.
Okay.
The joy of the Lord is really my strength.
There you go.
I'm able to work incredible hours. I'm to do multitasking, to have things accomplished, and that's just the sheer work ethic.
Okay.
Born out of the rule of cropping tobacco and doing those things that you have to do on farms. I still quite enjoy and will be in Hallsboro next week, where we have a small herd of Black Angus cows that I help to keep with my cousin who's there on a more regular basis than I am. But that same work ethic is translated into ministry. One of the things I try to get my pastors to see now, in particular a lot of young pastors, and my son who's in Phoenix, that ministry is labor intensive. There is not a time where you can put your feet up. And those who are successful, I guarantee you, they have an enormous and incredible work ethic. And so I think my strength is that work ethic. I do bi-coastal things, and people ask about jet lag, and I don't even know what that is, because whatever the time zone is, if I'm supposed to sleep, I sleep. I'm supposed to be up, I'm up.
I'm picturing you with those Black Angus cows.
Yeah. Relaxing early. And it's the kind of thing that keeps you in touch with God and with the creation and the Creator, which is a big issue that we also have to address now. With climate control and creation issues, it is also a spiritual matter.
I'm aware of our time. We're just coming to a close, but I want to ask you this question. Personally, what has been the most challenging aspect of life dedicated to serving others?
I think the resistance that you often encounter, but I've come to know and understand that what we are most confronted with is not flesh and blood. And often people are unwilling hosts to the adversarial forces that sometimes we find ourselves dealing with. But we have to always remember that greater is He that is in us than he that is in the world.
Can you please share with us once again, Bishop, the telephone number for that prayer line?
712-432-3066. The access code is 621775, and we're on each morning, Monday through Friday, at 7.
7 a.m.
7 a.m.
Pacific time.
Pacific Standard Time. And if you have a specific prayer request, you can email it directly to prayers, Prayers, at westernamezion.us.
All right. And the dates, once again, for that explosion.
Wow, that's exciting. September 27th, 28th, and 29th, Esther Short Park at 6 p.m. And we're expecting 8,000 people. So you don't want to be late. You want to come, because it's going to be standing room only.
And is there a place where people can get that information?
Yes, you can go online to www.d2b, dare to believe, www.d2b@faith.com.
All right. Bishop, thank you so much.
Thank you, John, for the privilege and the pleasure.
All right. And we look forward to seeing you again right here. Now, please remember, look for us on Studio 32, where we'll be offering you the best in music, national and international entertainers. God be with you. Take care.